Welcome back to the channel, guys. It's Irad, and in today's video we are going to crap the heck out of one of the worst games I've played in the past decade, Star Wars Squadrons. A major disappointment for me of the 2020s, for probably the fact that it's like virtually signaling all over our face, and I found that absolutely insufferable. But it seems like here there's another channel here. This is from BunoutJack. He only has 284 subscribers, so if I like this video I might subscribe to him, and he wants to ask what happened to Star Wars Squadrons. So let's see if we are on the same page when it comes to this debacle of a game.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Star Wars Squadrons?
Let me put that a little bit better here. I like that. This is a very cool intro there. Alright, let's continue.
I thought not. It's not a story EA would tell you. It's a gaming legend.
Star Wars Squadrons is an enigma. A rise and fall so quick it barely left a mark. One day it was the most hyped game releasing, the next week, irrelevant. If a time traveler went back in time and stopped this game from being developed, the timeline we are on wouldn't change in the slightest. Now personally, I have a soft spot for this game. I was hyped for its release and sunk many hours into playing it well after it launched.
Same, me too. I was very hyped for it. I was very excited. I had a lot of hope for this game. It looks great. It plays okay. It's not as good as X-Wing Alliance, unfortunately, if you're looking for a sim. But still, in terms of sim experience in a Star Wars ship, it's the best there is in recent history, though. That is true. However, there are a couple of elements that, in my opinion, make it far inferior and sometimes infuriating compared to its predecessors in the genre that date back in the 1990s.
I love the game, and as I played more and more, I was sadly forced to watch it die player by player until I could only find matches by joining co-op games against AI. So how did this happen? The game is beautiful, plays well, and offers the best starfighter gameplay in Star Wars video game history. No, sorry. You should try, what's his name again? BunoutJack. You should try X-Wing Alliance with the X-Wing Alliance upgrade. TIE Fighter reimagined as well. Try this and you're going to have an even better experience than this. And don't mention even the multiplayer mode, because also the X-Wing Alliance community is working really hard on bringing multiplayer back and making it relevant in the X-Wing in the X-Wing, I would say, genre, or the X-Wing scene, right? So that's actually, even that is not right. I'm pretty sure that right now probably there are even more multiplayer games for X-Wing Alliance than Star Wars Squadrons. Shout out to TIE Fighter and X-Wing, but this game is peak. That being said, just a month after its release, Squadrons had lost over 90% of its player base and it never recovered.
And there are a couple of things. Let's just here I think he's just talking about the multiplayer, right? When it comes to multiplayer, luckily there's no story elements, so that is gone, right? For me, that was the biggest turnoff. The thing is, we just have 5 versus 5. Who thought this was a good idea? We want to have massive battles of, 12 versus 12, a full squadron. A squadron in Star Wars is 12 ships, not 5. So already the game was flawed from the start, giving us only 5 ships per squadron. That was absolutely ridiculous.
It currently rests with only 80 players, dead lobbies, and a pile of mixed reviews. While the usual culprit of a rushed, incomplete launch is obvious, there must be something else that drove players away. Plenty of games have moved past a bad launch, and surely a Star Wars game of this quality could have, but it didn't.
Well, it didn't have a bad launch. I remember it had an okay launch, right? People did praise the game for its beauty. It's a beautiful game, and it did praise the game for how the ships are flawed, right? It has a lot of very good quality. It's based on the solid base, right, from the Starfighter mode of Battlefront 2, but turned into a sim. It's actually a good game. It's just that the devs did not do a good job at making it sustainable.
Why?
Perhaps it was indeed the bugs and balance issues at launch that led to the drought of players. You know, maybe it was the mishandled rank system, or long
that I remember that.
matchmaking queues.
Yeah. Very long matchmaking and the ranking, right? Well, the ranking. I remember the ranking system was not ready on start, and I found that infuriating.
It could also be that this is just not the game the Star Wars community expected. With its unique gameplay and high skill curve, it stands alone among the typical FPS or story-driven Star Wars games. To get to the bottom,
No, I don't think so. I think people should be informed, right? I think that there was indeed a market for Star Wars Space Sim. It's just, for me, it didn't push the boundary as far as they could, right? What I really like about the X-Wing games is like you've got so many details in the names of ship, the name of squadron. Here, when you're playing the single-player campaign, for example, you just have, you know, TIE Fighter, TIE Bomber. You don't even have the name of the squadron. You don't even have some information, background information that the original Star Wars Space Sims were giving. And that, for me, that was quite a disappointment. Also, it was lacking a lot of ships. Like, seriously, they should have built way more ships than they are. I'm talking about NPC ships, right? It feels like we were always seeing the same ships over and over again. And there was nothing spectacular. None of the battles were interesting. Apart from the first battles in the campaign, nothing was interesting. We were always, you know, playing in debris or fighting a damaged Imperial Star Destroyer. That's so freaking boring. This is like, yeah, the single-player campaign was so boring. On top of, you know, telling us like, oh, we are the good guys and we're fighting the bad guys, and the Imperials being so obnoxious at the same time, which is like, oh, it was just terrible.
how this game flopped so hard, we're going to have to do some digging. We're going to look at the state of the game on release, post-launch, and what the current state of Star Wars Squadrons is. So let's get started. Well, the world first heard of Star Wars Squadrons on July 15th, 2020, and its release and peak player count happened later that year on October 2nd. On release, the critics reviewed this game as generally favorable, if not great.
It was a good
And
game.
while there were some issues at launch that others experienced, luckily for myself, I was able to dive right in and start playing.
Yeah, me too.
And man, this game was perfect. It takes some practice to get used to, sure, but that obstacle comes with the advantage of total mobility. The multiplayer matches were rewardingly intense,
Yeah.
and the immersion I felt while playing against players was unmatched.
It was fantastic. That's true. Yeah, the PvP side was, it's just like it liked diversity in terms of ships, scenarios, right? It was very bare bone. That's the thing.
But that was the problem. It was only great when there were people to play with. As I played week after week, it was harder and harder to find people to play with. And playing against the AI gets stale pretty fast. Although I was experiencing what I considered to be peak Star Wars gameplay, it was clear the community felt different. And I think it's important to find out why. Looking through Reddit and Steam, I came across a bunch of half answers. Some didn't like the forced first-person perspective.
No, that's, oh, come on. That is so silly. Just don't play. This is the game that's meant to be played in first person.
Others claim it didn't accurately capture the feel of a Star Wars game.
Okay, that is true. That 5v5, ridiculous, right?
People complained about ship balancing issues, and overall, many just saw it as a bad game. But I think there has to be a more substantial reason this game failed. And surprisingly, I don't actually think it's entirely EA's fault this time.
Okay.
Wild statement, I know, but there's a first for everything. To me, there are 3 key reasons this game failed. And we're going to look at all of them through 2 different perspectives.
I've said it since the beginning. The single player campaign for me gave me a really bad taste. Even when I played in multiplayer, I was thinking of all the bad vibes I had playing the single player campaign. And that's what maybe turned it off. I've never reinstalled it after a couple of months. I played it a couple of months online, and same, just like him, I saw less and less people play, and I was like, all right, this game is dead, and the single player campaign sucks. I'm never gonna play it again. Just like I played the single player campaign of, you know, TIE Fighter and X-Wing Alliance over and over and over again. Sometimes I still do, and I really enjoy those games because, you know, these are epic stories that are meaningful, right? That don't tell us how bad we are as people, but this. The Lucasfilm Story Group could not help themselves but to push their message, you know, crap inside their game, and that's why I didn't want to play it anymore.
One through the lens of the game upon release, and another with the current state of the game in 2024.
How can you do this? This is outrageous. It's unfair.
This game received only 4 updates. Most were bug fixes, some added maps or ship components, but the only substantial change came with the last patch, which added in a couple of new ships, including the B-Wing and TIE Defender, and a few more cosmetics.
Like super OP. That's super OP. Like, why would you play any other ship than the TIE Defender or the B-Wing, right?
This was on December 11th, and by that time, the game was already considered to be dead. Now, to be fair, back then, it wasn't as bad as it is today. You could still manage to find some ranked lobbies, and death matches didn't take too long to load into. There was still a small fraction of loyal players enjoying the game. You know, I remember the release of the B-Wing and TIE Defender fondly. They both added very unique roles to the game's already highly interesting ranked mode, which, for those of you who haven't played it, was an amazing MOBA-style strategic 5v5 battle between starfighters, frigates, and capital ships.
But they're always the same ships, right? That's the thing. It's always the same ships. And 5v5.
It's a blast. Playing today, the visuals hold up amazingly, and flying an X-Wing in VR still hits the same. The patches made are evident, and the ships added still feel completely fleshed out and viable. But there is that ever-lingering issue of having no one to play with. Maybe if this game had gone the more popular live service route, it would have seen more success.
Maybe.
I know that EA had hyped this game up to be the next major addition to esports, but it never got the care a competitive game needs to succeed long term. Still, what we got on release and through the few updates was more than enough in my eyes to continue playing. So what else went wrong?
Take this upstairs, and be sure not to drop it.
Fumble
Whoa!
exploitations.
It was always a risk taking Battlefront 2's least popular game mode and fully fleshing it out into its own game.
That's
Many
true.
players simply weren't interested in a Star Wars game that wasn't an FPS shooter or an action-adventure single-player game.
But it's not because many people are not interested that they cannot be made to be interested, right? If the game is awesome, they will become interested.
For a game like this, there were always going to be fewer initial players on release.
That's true.
But the way it catered to lovers of spaceship combat should have helped a little, right? Well, as much as I and a dedicated few loved the high-skill, intense dogfights of Squadrons, it was always a niche game that required a specific kind of player. The learning curve was steep, and for many, that time investment was not worth the reward. Even within the Star Wars fanbase, not everyone is a die-hard starfighter enthusiast. And I think this is where EA starts to take some of the blame. EA set out to make a competitive space combat simulator, which on paper sounds like a fantastic idea. However, the marketing didn't adequately convey the steep learning curve in niche gameplay, which led to mismatched expectations. Many players seem to have expected a more casual, pick-up-and-play experience like the space battles in Battlefront.
I think that it was still possible if there had been enough people playing and if the ranking system had worked properly. I think that the noobs, right, the players who are not so good and didn't go or don't want to bother going through the steep learning curve could have all played together and it would have been all good, and then the good players would have been together as well. The problem is that the ranking system didn't work so well.
But they were instead met with a complex, demanding flight simulator. And as a result, players quickly moved on to other games that promised more regular updates and fresh experiences.
How did we get into this mess? We seem to be made to suffer.
The problem is that there were no other Star Wars games that offer this kind of experience. That thing, apart from X-Wing Alliance, and I am a part of the X-Wing Alliance community, the TIE Fighter reimagined community. They went back there. You know, they played Squadrons and then they're like, meh, and then they went back to the games that they love because these were better games, better
It's our
made.
lot in life.
As I've mentioned numerous times, this game had a major issue with retaining player counts from the get-go. For a game that focuses so heavily on simulating dogfights and strategic fleet battles, this quickly became a problem. I tried everything I could do to get into games. I joined Discord servers for finding groups, played with ranked clans, and would wait upwards of an hour or two just to get into a fleet battle. And
That's the other problem, is that the matching system, especially with EA games, are absolutely terrible. Like, I remember these old days when we had lobbies and you had list of lobbies and you could choose the lobbies you would join, and it was so much easier, right? But even that did not exist
Week
in
after week,
Squadrons.
the time to play got longer and longer. Yes, dogfights were usually easier to load into, and there is a game mode where you can play player versus AI fleet battles. But this game was literally crafted and made for its PvP fleet battles, which are incredibly fun and challenging. They require coordination between bombers, fighters, interceptors, and support ships alike, and for me, these were a blast. But today, in 2024, they are unplayable. Not in a sense that they are bugged out or glitched, there's just no one to play with. This drought of players is what eventually drove me and many other fans of Squadrons away. We held out hope for months that something would change.
Wow, so this guy is this die-hard Squadrons fan. I did not imagine there were still people like that. That's crazy.
People would finally see the gem of a game that this is, or that another update would come, but nothing. The player base continued to dwindle, and the time it took to play the game's best mode got too long for anyone to justify waiting, and so the game just died. Thanks for watching this love letter to one of my favorite Star Wars games. I so very much wish.
He did not even mention the single-player campaign at all. I can't believe it. Come on, BunoutJack. That's the reason why people left. This game single-player campaign was just off-putting. That's why, you know, when you are being told how much of a bad person you are, and when you are being thrown at in our face, you know, some of the private life elements of the characters that are absolutely irrelevant to the story. Yeah, maybe people are not interested to play that kind of crap, right? When it pushes the message. Oh, I forgot the pronouns too, right? So yeah, maybe that's why.
This game had gotten more traction, and it's very sad to see the current state of the game. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. The vast majority of those who watch my channel aren't subscribed, and for a small channel like mine, every sub means a lot and pushes me to continue making quality videos.
Well, it was a quality video, that's true. BunoutJack, sorry, buddy. Let me see what else he has. Let me see if I'm going to subscribe or not. Voice actors, Helldivers, Payday. That is a little too short here. I'll keep an eye on you, BunoutJack. Maybe if you continue, I will subscribe. But I'll put the link in the description down below. Do you agree with BunoutJack here that it's actually a great game, but people did not follow it, or people decided to move out because it was too niche? I don't agree with that. I think it's because of the sour taste that it left in the people's mouth. But anyway, maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, that is all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I've been Irad, and I'll see you guys in the next one.